This is what my real estate portfolio looked like. Roughly $6.5 million in real estate with the potential of generating over $53,000 a month in income at a 75% occupancy rate. But things changed a lot in the past few years and we decided to get rid of almost half of our portfolio, $2.5 million in real estate to be exact. Now this episode is about how local laws, competition, and homelessness can be signs it's time to let go of poor investments. Stick around to the end and I'll show you exactly where I'm shifting the money for even better returns. So between my business partner and myself, this is what our portfolio would look like today if we had kept everything that we had owned and managed. Now, these two spots here at the bottom are assets I'm purchasing or in the process of purchasing to make up for all of these and maybe even more. I'll share what I can about them later since I did sign NDAs, but they're really cool projects. But they're very different from what you see here. This here are the respective values of the properties in today's market. This here is their average nightly rate in today's short-term rental market, giving us almost $54,000 in monthly revenues. That's a pretty decent income on a relatively small portfolio. Why would we then hack up our holdings then? Because you should get in the habit of getting rid of the bottom 10 to 20% of your portfolio that consistently underperforms or has little to no upside. That's true in stocks and real estate. Now, sometimes what you once thought was a good investment turns out to be a bad investment due to miscalculations and changes out of our control. I had a business professor that used to say, slow to hire, quick to fire when it came to getting the right people on your team. And I think that this also applies to an investment portfolio. Now, many of these did start off as great investments, but they did turn sour quickly. Let me show you why. Dope. Hello. Cut him in the middle of something. Okay. See ya. Can I get some of that water? These two. Gosh, that was really rude. I'm super sorry about that. Now, every single one of these homes were high performing listings until two things occurred. First was significant increase in competition in a very small radius. As Airbnb became more popular, people were converting their homes and buying properties just to rent out on Airbnb, as you probably see and know inside your own city. Now, basics of business. As supply increases and demand is relatively the same, prices go down. And over the time frame of just a year or two, we watch pricing get more than halved, sometimes cut into a third by amateur competition who came into the marketplace and started price wars. Now, if you don't know what a price war is, it basically means a fierce competition in which retailers cut prices in an attempt to increase their share of the market, or in this case, occupancy. And that's one thing I learned about the fickle nature of short-term rental businesses, is that you have a very high number of novice and inexperienced entrepreneurs entering the space due to the low barriers to entry. Stick around to the end and I'll tell you how I'll be combating that. So with this surge of competition, profit margins and occupancy rates began to dwindle. Homes in around the city used to rent out between $200 to $500+ a night. But if you remember, at the peak of all of this, around 2015, 2019 time period, you could rent spaces in the middle of the city for less than $100. It was not uncommon to find places for even $50 a night. You can go check this out for yourself. Just go to Airbnb.com, put in any major city in the search engine, and you'll see that most of the time rates are gonna be around $100 or even less, which is really a joke when it comes to value and actual profitability. Now, that was just the first trial that sunk a portion, rather large portion, of our portfolio. The second came from the regulatory bodies themselves, such as local governments, municipalities, and HOAs, which is usually ran by old retirees with nothing better to do than flex the power that they wish they had over their neighborhoods. Think of an autocratic government, but instead of a country, it's your neighborhood. Massive regulations, laws, and permits came into place to help control the fast-growing short-term rental market, and honestly, because of some bad hosts and illegal activities. Now, some of the most cutthroat regulations that were served were owners had to live on the premises. A traffic study had to be conducted, and up to a $5,000 permit was required. And then the last and perhaps the worst of them all is just straight up no short-term rentals allowed. And that's what ultimately killed these investments for us. Everything highlighted here were impacted by one or both of these issues. So when it looked like this before, overnight it became something like this. Now, we could have still rented these units out mid or long term at these monthly profit margins, but it just really wasn't worth it profit-wise, and also we would fall into landlord-tenant laws that we really did not want to get involved in, because as many of you know, I am currently wrapped up in a court case with one of these dummies. Did you know that there are powers in place that will not allow you to evict a tenant who has refused to cooperate or pay you rent for more than 8 months? Welcome to my world. So we could have converted the spaces, or liquidate them and then shift the resources somewhere else that has a way better return, which is exactly what I decided to do. So out of the impacted properties, we got rid of these ones. Now, I know that there are a lot of real estate investors out there who say you should never sell or get rid of real estate, which is true to a certain extent. But at the time that we made these decisions, we needed to free up both equity and time to remain focused on what we really wanted to do. But here's an example of a good reason why holding on to property forever isn't always the best strategy. Now, for some properties, you just know you won't get much more value by holding on to them, such as my luxury high-rise condo in the middle of the city. The price has literally gone down over the past 5 or 6 years, including the last 2 years, which has been a booming market for the entire state. Now, right before I sold, I knew there were plans to build another high-rise right next to it, thus blocking off the view of the city and the beautiful scenery. On top of that, throw in rising massive homeless camps, riots, and crime rates. The signs were pretty clear. So I put it up for sale, and sure enough, 2 years later, the high-rise goes up along with crime and homelessness, and it devalues all the condo units in the building. And you can actually see the decrease in valuation at a time where most other homes are seeing a 10 to 20% plus year-over-year increases. So knowledge and understanding of an area and what impacts value plays a big part in this too. Now, it's important that we have a critical eye at our own investments to make sure we don't get anchored or even pulled down by what was once a good decision but now is a poor performing asset. Everything needs to have an exit plan, and sometimes it's sooner than we want. Now, another reason why I didn't really like these properties is the fact we could not expand equity in these properties either. These were either townhomes, condos, or single family homes in neighborhoods where we really couldn't build or create any additional equity. We just kind of had to hope and pray that the market went up. And at the end of the day, it was better for us just to wipe our hands clean of them. So what am I doing with this additional time and money? Well, I learned a lot from the past couple of years, and I'm no longer pursuing traditional single family homes, particularly inside cities, especially liberal cities. The landlord-tenant laws are atrocious, and they wonder why there's a housing shortage. Instead, I'm focused on more rural properties and areas that have fewer regulations, such as states like Texas. But in addition to buying real estate, I want to diversify my holdings and expand into purchasing cash flowing businesses that require little to none of my personal time. And that's why I'm looking at buying rural properties with flexible zoning and permits that allow me to create multiple income streams from one property. Now, you may know that I'm not a huge fan of the 1-to-1 ratio of doors to property. Pretty confining how you can generate income, and your ability to expand is obviously very limited. Because if you know an area is solid and you have the means, why not invest in a property that has several options rather than just one? And that's what I'm intending on doing with my next property and land hack project. Now, I'll be buying into a space that is zoned and permitted to host events, weddings, but also overnight guests. Almost the perfect combo when it comes to my strategy around land hacking. If that interests you and you want to learn more, you can jump into my program with me over at kaiandrew.com. You can even set up a time to talk with me and see if it's a good fit for what you're trying to do. Now, this property is already operational and there's a good history of returns. That means that I'm buying into an existing business and property that will generate 6 figures in cash flows to me. This particular deal, we're firming up on the final details of the purchase, and I can't share much more until we close, but I will 100% make a video and give you all a full tour once everything is signed and ready to go. Now, the second investment I'm in the midst of firming up on is the purchase of an online service-based business located on the East Coast that I can't quite make super public just yet, since we are due to sign in about 2 weeks. Yep, between the programs launching, searching, and doing due diligence on these businesses and properties, things for me have been busy, just to say the least, on top of all the construction that we're also doing. But instead of buying another nice property, I decided to buy a business that will give another 6 figures in annual return. Not only are the returns more consistent and stable than short-term rentals, but the business value can grow much faster and higher than standard appreciation inside a normal property. It's generally a really good idea to diversify your investment portfolio, and businesses are a great way to buy into an existing cash flow and customers. Sometimes, it looks really fun and sexy to have a portfolio of dozens, maybe even hundreds of different types of properties and homes. Usually we call it multiple doors in the biz, but really you should be looking for the best bang for your buck now, tomorrow, and 10 years from now. And I don't see that for a lot of short-term rental properties or homes. And honestly, I could probably acquire 5 or 6, maybe even 7 other properties with the amount of money that I'm spending on these 2 projects, but I'd rather have a select number of businesses and properties that are easy to manage, that still give me 20 to 30% plus return on my money, and then another big ringer here, another potential 7-figure return on the equity building side, which is something that I don't think a lot of people factor in. And you just can't do that with traditional real estate. Not a way that I found so far. Now, go check out how my friend Cass almost lost her $50,000 to $75,000 a month income property here. Bye.